I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. I am Lorna Wade. I'm the chair of the Personnel Committee. Would everybody else introduce themselves? And we'll start with Mr. Jacobs first.
Don Jacobs, a consultant working for the town.
Michelle?
Oh, Michelle Jervis, Administrative Secretary.
Mary Beth Marziotti.
Joan Gardecki.
John Ruda, Town Administrator.
So we're having a special meeting because we already had a meeting in October for today. And just one item on new business, Jonathan, can you update on where we're at with the highway foreman's position?
Superintendent.
rather.
Yep. So we are at round 2. Notices will go out this week, maybe early next week, for the unsuccessful candidates. We're bringing in 3 more on Monday at 6:30 for round 2, and hopefully we'll move forward from there.
All right. So this is being done by the Board of Selectmen?
Correct.
And they will do that with the second round also?
Correct.
And that will be done so that it can be viewed on public access?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. Any questions about that? All right. Seeing no other, is there any other new business anybody wants to bring up?
No.
So, Mr. Jacobs?
I'm sorry, actually I do. Is there any other applicants for our remaining positions that we have open?
The board.
We have 2 positions open on our board.
Yes, actually, we had a 3rd applicant,
Michelle Hayes.
Michelle Hayes, who recently submitted, so we now have 3 applicants for 2
I'd like
positions.
to
Take this in.
hopefully move forward with that as soon as we can so that we can have a full board in case anyone is
I think it's on
unable to come.
November 9th. That's the next regular Board of Selectmen meeting. Correct, right, Michelle?
I think our next one is the 10th, yes.
Okay, well, we may be in good shape.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jacobs, it's all yours. And I thought we were having other people here today besides us. No? Was I wrong in that?
Well, Don did some work and interacted with some of the department heads and employees over the course of the last month and fine-tuned some of his recommendations. So we thought before we went down that road, we would see what Don came up with and then proceed.
Okay. All right.
Good morning. Just to follow up on what John just said, when we last met, or between now and then, as John just indicated to the board, Phyllis and John have distributed to all the department heads the proposed classification plan, along with the what we refer to as the characteristic chart, describing or defining the characteristics that explain the different grade levels, and asked them to review it, and then if they had any questions, concerns, to either get back to John and/or through him to me, and basically that's what's happened. So I've had a chance actually to speak to, and you have a memo from myself to John this morning that basically explains who I've spoken to. I was about to say who I've met with. That would be a misnomer. I've talked to them on the phone. And I guess what I want to share with the board is that, and I guess in taking the time to really emphasize once again, how important it is relative to managing classification for the board and/or employees, anyone that has an interest in compensation. And when I use the word compensation, I'm talking about paying a position. We're not yet talking about paying an employee. That you simply refer to the characteristic chart as a way of describing or explaining why positions are at one grade level and perhaps not another, as the case might be. And so what that allows you to have, and I'm saying you as a board, or whether it's town administrator, selectman, whomever, it allows you to have a conversation, frankly, not based on dollars and cents, but based on what the town is now going through to establish different levels of responsibility that I mentioned to you last time, because I think that's the word that I think encapsulates or describes the different grade levels. So the higher the grade level, the higher the level of responsibility. How we define that word responsibility, you see now spelled out in the characteristic chart. That's the summary, okay? It's not the detail. It gives you enough information, hopefully, for everyone to understand it. And so as a result of the feedback that I got from department heads, it allowed me to have a conversation, frankly, with them and try to keep the focus of the conversation on the position, not the employee. It's only natural when someone talks about a position to at times talk about the employee at the same time. But the reality is we're talking about today how you're classifying a position, which will directly relate to how you're paying the position. Okay, and as I shared with the board last time, you now have a sense, hopefully, of how we then bring market data. Once we've grouped a position, then we bring into consideration the market data, the rate of pay of the employee, and then last but not least, the number of years of service that the employee is in their current position. All that information goes into classifying a position. And the word I always like to use is competitively. You know, that's a word that we don't like to talk about in the public sector, frankly, but yet that's what's really behind this whole process, is determining, or I should say establishing a process and doing so in a consistent way to establish both internal equity, instead of equity you could say competitiveness, and as well as external equity or competitiveness. So you see in the memo I've written to the town administrator, what I'm recommending as changes from the plan as you've seen it the last time you saw it, is and again, titles are titles. One of the things that I think before I forget, once there's a draft plan that's been approved by the Board of Selectmen, then as I've indicated to the town administrator, we need to go back and look at the titles. So for example, the title clerk or admin assistant, your guess is as good as mine what those titles mean today. We want to make sure that once we have positions grouped, that we establish titles that everyone understands that are consistent with the different levels of responsibility, okay? So when I say assistant town clerk, I'm not sure whether that title actually technically exists at the moment, but we're talking about the support position to the town clerk. And as I indicated, very briefly, what the town clerk conveyed to me was the draft, and I think she was at your last meeting, so you heard what she had to say, obviously. And I went back and had another conversation with her, and she reiterated what she said at the last meeting. And that is that the assistant town clerk, in her opinion, as the manager of the department, is required to, at times, give direction and guidance to other employees. Well, if you look at the draft description I initially wrote, which came directly from the employee, I didn't make it up, okay? It didn't say anything about supervisory responsibility. In fact, it said the position wasn't required, the employee wasn't required to have any supervisory responsibility. Well, since then, the town clerk has obviously indicated that, in fact, she does, as the manager of the department, require the employee to supervise. And in this case, provide direction and guidance. And all I did at that point, as it indicates in my memo, is go back and look at the characteristic chart, and based on what the town clerk indicated or said to me, I'm recommending that that position be moved from grade level 2, where it was initially recommended to be classified, to grade level 3. And if you look at the characteristic chart, grade level 3 talks about a work leader level of supervisory responsibility. That's how it all ties together. Nowhere during the conversation with the town clerk, or anyone really, have we talked about dollars and cents yet, because it's not part of the process at the moment, okay? So I am recommending an adjustment. Oh, the other thing the town clerk mentioned when she was here was that she had gone out and collected additional data from 2 other communities that I hadn't received any feedback from. And I have added that back into the charts that I initially did, and you'll see them all. The other thing I can share with you, I guess, just to summarize it, is that adding those 2 additional towns, so now we have 8 responses, not 6. Because we average the market data we collect, the net effect of those additional towns and whatever their rates of pay are, I describe it as negligible. It's not significant. It might have increased the survey data by a few cents, literally. We're talking pennies. And remember, we're using the midpoint of the data we collect, not the minimum and the maximum. So deciding how you use the market data isn't a dollars and cent driven decision. It's a decision as to how really you want to compare yourself to the marketplace. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this process, which I think only benefits the town, but it also benefits the employee. So I've added that data back, and I've put together a proposed salary range to survey data chart that reflects the assistant town clerk. If you were to move it from grade level 2 to grade level 3, what's the effect? The bottom line is it doesn't have any effect, no effect in terms of cost to the town. That movement of the position from level 2 to level 3 is based solely, or I shouldn't say, that's probably the wrong word to use, primarily, because we are looking at market data as well. I don't want you to think, because we did look at market data, but it's primarily determined by, the characteristics that define each of the grade levels, as I just indicated, okay? But it's not there is no cost to the town to move the assistant town clerk position from level 2 to level 3, okay? And if you have questions about that, I can obviously,
But I just want a clarification,
yeah, sure.
a point of clarification. So when people were placed on the chart, on grade levels,
Yeah,
that determination was from responses that the employees of the town gave you on a survey, plus
questionnaire.
a questionnaire, plus
Correct.
their supervisors,
correct.
and so that compilation determined, so they had a say as to where they were placed on this chart.
No.
They did. in
Well, they
that
had to say, I'm
did
sorry.
in that they filled
They
the
didn't make
question-
that decision.
Oh,
I
you did, but
I
they filled
made
the
the decision.
questionnaire listing what their responsibilities were and what they did.
Correct,
With input from their supervisors.
correct. In other words, there are checks and balances built into this process right from the get-go. Remember, before we did anything, I met with the employees and explained to them what what I was going to do and how it was going to be done, for the simple reason to give them an opportunity to voice any concerns, but basically to understand what was going to happen before it happened. So that questionnaire, if you look at the document, there's a signature line for the employee to sign, and there's also a signature for the department head to sign. So that when I got that document back, that's how I wrote a draft description. Okay, I didn't, I went, if the department head had indicated anything on that questionnaire, contrary to what the employee had said, I told the employees, the tie goes to the department head. I follow the lead of the department head, because that's the manager, okay? But at the same time, by sending the draft description back to the employee and giving them another opportunity to really review the draft, as what has happened is, frankly, the significance of saying no responsibility for supervision, for example, which is what I was just talking about. People now are beginning to understand the significance as it relates to how the position is being, quote-unquote, classified, okay? And that's what the town clerk reacted to. She may not have known, frankly, and I can't speak for her, obviously, but she may not have realized, based on the questionnaire, she didn't say anything about, that supervisory. I would assume, and I'm just guessing, I didn't ask why you didn't say anything. I just know she didn't, right? And I just know that once she had a chance to read it again, and that's the nice thing about this process, we're giving people plenty of opportunity. They can't say we haven't given them the time to react to and understand what we're doing. So the assessor clerk, for example, in talking to the assessor, basically the question I asked him, well, do you require this employee or this position to have supervisory responsibility? And the answer was no, which is the way the draft description was written, which is why I'm recommending no change for that position. The clerk in the treasurer collector's office, I just, there was a title clerk that was shown in the draft. I just forgot to put in the parentheses, the treasurer collector. I left the position out, or didn't identify it, and the treasurer collector wanted to make sure that he wouldn't forget it. And then the last one is the, I keep saying the word clerk because that's what they're called today. It's really, again, the support position in the water and sewer department. So in talking to the employee, and also I've gotten a written memorandum from the, I guess, interim water superintendent.
He's the regular now.
He's the regular now, okay, I'm sorry. So he wrote a memo, to, excuse me, to the town administrator, and he copied me on the memo, pointing out that this position, again, has the level of accountability or responsibility relative to the water and sewer billing function, which obviously has a significant financial implication, and in my opinion, justifies moving that position in terms of level of accountability or responsibility from level 2 to, once again, level 3. And again, the nice thing about that is that, from my perspective at least, is that even though I'm not really sure, because I haven't really talked to the water superintendent, I don't think the employee has any supervisory responsibility. So it was really based on the accountability aspect of the job that I'm recommending moving that position from level 2 to level 3.
Is it
Okay?
reflected in this chart already? Is that the administrative assistant water sewer?
Correct. He referred to it as an admin assistant, and again, I just would urge you not to get too hung up on the titles, because I'm not sure what the accurate titles are yet. I prefer to say it's the support position. He referred in his memo to the position as the admin assistant, so I used his title. The town hasn't decided that yet.
So Jonathan, I have a question for you. I'm assuming that now everybody within the building has seen this chart and where they're placed on it?
This chart, I believe, was memorial. I think they know where they're going with it. I don't think that they've seen the,
I'm just asking
Latest
whether people
iteration
have
of
seen
it.
this and said,
Don and I discussed it on the phone yesterday.
okay, so they haven't seen it necessarily and given you feedback on it.
No.
But they did initially see this?
Some of them contacted me.
Some
Yeah.
of them contacted you?
Yeah.
I'm assuming they contacted because they saw it.
Send it out today.
They have? All
They
right.
saw the initial,
You know,
right?
the assessor,
that's-
the,
Got it this morning.
I mean,
Okay.
the town clerk I'd already met, because she was at the last meeting, and again, she called me.
Is
In
all-
between.
I'm
last-
assuming that this has been a very transparent process.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, then that's all that's what I'm assuming.
And it's ongoing. I mean, this isn't the end of the process by any means.
Right.
Again, I think really one of the real advantage, one of the real pluses, and I really mean it seriously, in establishing a consistent way to do this, and I think I shared with you right at the beginning, the number one concern I have in doing these studies is not the money, it's the lack of communication. And I said that to you. And so if an employee, for some reason, didn't take the time to see it, didn't understand, your guess is as good as mine, they may have a reason for whatever, that they just, you know, all of a sudden they want to express a concern. Great. You want to encourage them to do that at any time. So it's not like we've reached a point where, you know, we won't listen to any more concerns or comments. Just the opposite. You know, you can always comment on it or express a concern at any time. Now, the employees haven't seen all the dollars and cents yet, right? They haven't, I don't think they've seen the salary data, for example. At least I don't think they have. Not that we, you know, we'll share it with them and they'll hopefully understand how we've used it and all that kind of thing. So that's what I mean by ongoing. It's not, you know, an end of the process. So with those recommendations, otherwise the plan as I initially presented to you, obviously I'm saying hasn't changed.
Joan?
Don, I would go back and just, I think there's a second clerk in the, that we've already done in the treasurer collector's office that didn't make the chart.
Right, right.
But
No.
but she generally, in the absence of the treasurer collector, has supervisory responsibility over that clerk. So we just want to make sure she's included in the chart.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I recommended that assistant treasurer collector position be at level 3. And what I guess had forgotten or didn't realize, and that's why the treasurer collector called me, was that other support position.
I have a question on the classification plan. If the fire chief and police chief have the same point total as the administrator, why are they in a different grade?
Wait a minute. You're saying the support position, I'm sorry, could you just repeat that?
The fire chief and police chief have
Yeah.
the same point total as the town administrator, but they're in a different grade.
Well, hold on, I think that's a mistake. Hold on. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I haven't adjusted the points, but the town administrator position is ultimately going to have, it doesn't show it on here, but will have more points. It has been rated higher as it relates to the responsibility of reporting to the policy board and also assuming responsibility for overseeing the town operations, whereas the police and fire chiefs oversee their respective departments. So from a responsibility standpoint, I haven't adjusted the points for that, is what I'm saying.
I have a question for Jonathan.
That's a
Are they
mistake.
strong chiefs?
The fire chief is a strong chief, the police chief is, is not classified as strong, the fire chief is.
and yet they're the same point total.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure how much the strong chief applies to. They both answer directly to the Board of Selectmen, and to some degree, it goes through me. So, I don't think because they answer at such a high level that there's much of a change in the point total.
Okay.
And just to add one more point, and again, I don't think we've talked about this, but my understanding is that the fire chief and the police chief both have employment agreements.
Correct.
And so the selectmen need to decide, by putting these positions in here, it doesn't prevent in any way, shape, or form the selectmen's right to negotiate that employment agreement with those respective employees. So whether you put it in the plan or not, normally positions that have employment agreements aren't shown on the plan because they have separate, employment agreements with the town. So even though I'm showing them here, from a technical standpoint, they're not really part of this process. In other words, it's not subject to town meeting approval.
I think the larger distinction between the strong chief and not is, for example, the fire chief has the ability to appoint without going to the Board of Selectmen, subordinate officers, lieutenants, captains, group commanders, that sort of thing. But it's still in our bylaw for the appointment of police sergeants, the Board of Selectmen make those appointments. So the distinction is not so much the level of responsibility and the scope, but it's, small little distinctions like that make the difference between a strong chief and not.
Okay.
I
And
ask
again,
a
not to belabor
question?
the point, but if I could just add one more point as clarification. One of the things I should have done and I didn't do is I really should put an asterisk there after the fire chief and the police chief with an explanation below that indicating that they have employment agreements. I haven't had this conversation with the selectmen yet. They may decide, and understandably so, to take these two positions off the plan. They have the right to do that. And I just haven't asked them what they want to do. So I apologize for the confusion about the points.
I was just curious.
So I'm glad you
Also-
caught it. I made a mistake.
The accounting assistant really is the same as a clerk, and I can't understand why she would be the same grade as a library custodian.
And again, these initial groupings came directly from the questionnaire. So if you go back and look at the way the draft job description was written, it was really consistent with that level of responsibility of grade level 1.
Well, I haven't personally seen any job description.
Well, again, the employees have seen it. They've gotten their draft descriptions.
Have you, Lorna?
Ultimately,
I haven't.
no, we haven't given, I don't think we've given the board copies of the draft descriptions. I don't think.
No, I have not. We have not seen that aspect of it. We've seen everything, I think pretty much everything else, but we did not see,
Right.
I think we saw, did we see the questionnaire? Do you? I don't think we,
I
yeah, I think we saw the questionnaire.
I didn't,
not-
I've never seen it.
Yeah, then maybe that's what I'm remembering. And I missed part of the last meeting, and so I'm sure that the answer is somewhat within the job descriptions, but I'm surprised to see the town clerk and the treasurer in different categories. They're both elected positions in charge
I
of a
brought that up
department.
last time. Yes.
Yeah, let me respond to that. The reason why I'm recommending the treasurer collector position be at a higher grade level is the complexity aspect of being responsible for not just the treasury, but also the collection responsibility, which I would describe as two different financial functions, whereas the clerk is really only responsible for one.
Okay.
And the other aspect of it is the clerk job duties, responsibilities are primarily statutory. In other words, what a town clerk does in one department or one town is the same as another. They're all 99.9% of whether it's the permitting, the licensing, the elections, every aspect of a town clerk operation is governed by either local and or state or federal regulations or laws, whereas the treasurer collector has, frankly, a lot more independence. Like, a good example would be the investment of the town money. Again, not to belabor these conversations, but I think your point is probably well taken on the accounting assistant. As I said, I primarily, unless I had a reason to have a different opinion, I don't like to use the word disagree, with what the questionnaire said and/or how the draft description was written, I really depend upon feedback from the department head to either express a different opinion, or if I don't hear anything, I assume they're in agreement.
So Don, have you realigned job descriptions, and are there new job descriptions for these positions?
Yeah, once the Board of Selectmen has tentatively approved a plan, then at that point, because now we know we have a tentative plan, grade levels and ranges, at that point, what I encourage the town to do is distribute a draft job description that is now consistent. In other words, the last job description that the assistant town clerk saw was written at grade level 2. If the assistant town clerk position is approved at grade level 3, that tells me to go back and rewrite the draft job description for that position and then send it back to the department head and the employee once again. Okay? We don't do that until, obviously, we know we have a tentative plan. So to answer your question, yes, once there's a tentative plan approved, then what I encourage the town to do is to send that draft job description consistent with the proposed classification plan, once again, plus the characteristic chart. You know, when in doubt, I'd rather give them more information, and also a form that I call a job description acknowledgement form that requires the employee and the department head once again to sign, saying they've received the draft job description and they feel it's accurate. So that last document would then go in an employee's personnel file. So there's a written record that the employee and the department head have both had an opportunity to read the draft description and comment on it and sign their name, saying that on such and such a date, they've read it, they understand it, and it goes in their personnel file. That
Jonathan,
hasn't happened yet.
before you leave, Jonathan, I know you said you had another meeting at 10. So if this is accepted by the Board of Selectmen, would you agree that that's the next process, that job descriptions would then be?
Well, before it's accepted by the Board of Selectmen, I wanted to go through the Personnel Board, and I want to make sure that we've done employees, department heads. I want the employees backing, the department heads backing, this board's backing, then we go to the Board of Selectmen. That's how I would.
Okay,
and
all
then-
right.
And then I agree with Don, after it's been accepted, the plan has been accepted, then we go down the road with job descriptions and so forth.
So is there any action that you wish for us to take today on this?
I just want you to understand what the next steps are.
Okay, so
gonna
just a
be.
matter of understanding. All right,
And agree to them as well.
And agree to
Or
'em.
not agree with, or modify them.
All right.
Depends on.
all right. I just want to know what you want to see for a plan of action.
And I do have to jump out, but Don, I see the other proposal in here, and we'll execute that. I just don't know if I'll catch you before I.
Yeah, before you, I just wanted to also just take a moment to talk about the employee compensation plan again. So I've given John a proposal to amend the current agreement that I have with the town, and basically to develop a plan to pay employees, both to hire them as well as to retain them. And the outline of that plan, scope of service, basically says that we'll hold probably 3 meetings with your department heads to develop a proposed plan, and then that'll ultimately come back through you to the Board of Selectmen.
Which we currently have grant funds to pay for. Just,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Are there any other
Does the board have any questions about the employee aspect?
Do you, Joan?
I can't vote to approve the classification plan unless the accounting assistant is moved to grade 2 at least.
I'm sorry, you said?
I can't vote to approve this unless the accounting assistant is moved to the same as other clerks.
Unless the department heads,
Unless the accounting assistant
oh, the accounting assistant.
is moved to the same as the other clerks. That position is a clerk position.
All of the employees in these positions know what their classification is, and no?
Again, I've only asked John to, communicate back to the employees.
Yeah.
If I haven't heard anything, I have to assume, no news is good news kind of thing.
So we don't know whether the employees have seen where they've been placed in the
I
classification.
have not seen this chart. You just received it this morning.
So,
I would not feel comfortable approving it until we have feedback from the employees who are being placed in a position who may not have had the opportunity to say, look, here is my job description, or it's missing something that I do that would change my classification. I don't think that we should approve this without the employees knowing where they stand and having the ability to respond.
And again, if I could just interject, Madam Chairman.
sure, absolutely.
I think it's absolutely critical, employees always have an opportunity to voice any concerns. The key player in this process is your department head. They're the managers, right? They make the decision, not the employee. Now, ultimately, the selectmen make the final decision. So I just want to put that in, perspective so that, we all understand it. So that, your point is well taken about the accounting assistant. You can, I think, appreciate the fact that you could easily be classified at level 2, very easily. I always like to say you can't take the subjectivity out of this process. As long as you're being consistent with the characteristics that define each of the grade levels, the process works as it's intended to. So, again, all we're asking at this point is a tentative approval, quote unquote. It's important to get the selectman on record to give the town administrator the direction he needs, so that, as I indicated earlier, just a few minutes ago, that the next, once we know that selectmen are tentatively on board, then everything goes back to, to the department head, and through the department head to the employee, which, if nothing else, gives them another chance to react to it. So I'm surprised to hear they haven't seen it, because frankly, at the last meeting, I thought it was understood. Some of the departments called me. So I'm assuming they called me because they saw something. Now, why they haven't all seen it, again, I said the department heads,
Right. I sent
not the
Right,
employees.
understood.
Don't get me hung up on,
sent it
Oh,
to
no,
I'm not trying to mislead
I understand
you.
that.
In fact, just the opposite. I'm trying to be consistent with you. My concern right now is department head focus.
That's- I
It's
sent
the
it to
responsibility of the
heads,
department
not the
head.
people.
The department heads have seen this.
I did get the information to
Rank
department
and file
heads.
have not seen it, if they were
Well, they
underneath them.
that's the responsibility of the department head.
I couldn't agree with you.
If a department head decides not to share with the employee, well, ultimately, the department head should be held accountable, frankly. It's not the town's responsibility to communicate to the employee. We're trying to emphasize, in a sense, almost like a chain of command type of thing. If we're going to communicate to the employee, we want to do so through the department head. The last thing you want to do is go directly to the employee without the department head knowing it. That destroys the whole communication process, frankly.
Yep.
And we won't do that, or I would never recommend it. So again, I don't want to get hung up with you on technicalities between employee and department head. All of our communication at this point forward, once we wrote that initial draft description, has been through the department head.
Well, then, I think, and I totally agree with chain of command, that, you need to follow a certain level, but I would agree with both ladies that I would like to know from Jonathan whether all of the department heads have conveyed this information to the people that work under them.
And maybe see something in writing back from the department heads saying that they have reviewed it
Well-
and they're on board.
Remember I said before, once the Board of Selectmen, my concern is time, and I'm just sharing with you my concern. You decide what you want to do. My concern is that, unfortunately, with the pandemic, and I don't need to go into all that stuff, from the going back, Jesus, to when we first met with the
Wasn't gonna
employees.
kill us yet.
Knock the wall
I'm
down.
amazed these things are.
Going back to when I first met with employees, and a good example, well, I don't want to identify anybody, but I don't even remember what I did last March, to tell you the truth. But an employee apparently had a concern. First I heard of it was last week. And here I'm sitting there going, geez, when did I talk to this person? I had to go, luckily, I keep some notes when I meet with people, particularly the employees. So I literally knew when I met with that particular individual, I knew it was on March 10th. Well, I don't remember that. So once this board has a tentative approval of a proposed plan, because the last time we met with the selectmen, whenever that was, we didn't ask them for any approval. We just wanted to explain what we were doing and what the process was, no differently than what I did with you. And but once they give us a tentative approval, as I already said, we're going to send the draft description that's consistent with the tentative plan. Remember, the initial plan, I've just recommended a change to it, all right? So they're gonna get a revised description consistent with the proposed plan, plus the acknowledgement form. So we're gonna require both the employee, and Phyllis, I would ask you for the record, I guess I have to say it that way, to give the personnel board a copy of the acknowledgement form. I've got it with me right here, we can give it to them right now, so you can see it. And again, I'm recommending that acknowledgement form become part of the process going forward. Whenever the town of Dudley amends or writes a new job description, whenever, okay? That acknowledgement form should be part of the process, because we treat the job description like a policy document, and it's the town's responsibility to communicate to the employee and to have in writing a document that says they did it. Not verbally, not in my opinion, no. Just the opposite. It's documented, it's in writing, and here's your signature, kind of thing. The town doesn't do that today. So that's a change in the way you do this, right? Along with a lot of other changes. And I don't take for granted, it's easy for me to sit here and say what I just did, but until town employees and boards and everyone else feels it's in their best interest to do this, you and I both know it's not gonna work. It won't work over a period. You can force it, you can say you shall do it, but as opposed to getting them to want to do it, it's a whole different, way to frankly get something established and maintain it. So you don't need to ask employees to sign it. We're gonna ask them to do that. And as I said, once we have a tentative plan. So my understanding from what you said today is your tentative plan, assuming that, that's a consensus of agreement, with the exception of the accounting assistant you're recommending be moved to grade level 2, you're giving us tentative approval. The key word being, quote, tentative.
You could put that in your motion.
It's very important to move this process forward.
Have seen it.
Your motion.
The department
No.
heads have seen this classification.
Department heads have seen these classifications, and according to, I believe what Dawn said, it was their responsibility to convey that information to those who are working below them. And even before, which are basically, I think, if I understand Dawn correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is saying that we are approving the general concept of this plan, and that it will go to the Board of Selectmen saying that we agree to the general concept. If the board accepts it, then we need to have documentation from the department heads and the employees saying that they've seen these classifications, they've seen their job descriptions, they both have to sign off on it. And we get to, I think we will see that, and then that job description goes into their personnel file. Am I correct with that process?
Absolutely. That's what I've recommended. It's up to the town to implement it.
I'm gonna let Joan make that motion.
Pardon me?
I'm gonna let Joan make the motion.
You will accept it if Joe makes the motion, okay?
Well, I want to hear the wording of the motion.
Okay. Do you have a motion, Joan?
I make a motion that we accept the tentative plan of the salary survey from Don Jacobs.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Any further discussion?
Just that we're, as you said, we're approving the concept of it with further input from the department heads.
Yeah, when you say concept, again, I just want to be clear. The way I interpret concept is, I've given you a tentative plan, you're comfortable, you understand how it's been developed,
Yes.
period, okay? Just to add one little thing, not to put Phyllis on the spot, but since she's here, I can't resist. Anyone that knows Phyllis can appreciate that, as I've gotten to know her. She's phenomenal. But anyways, she sent a memo to every department head. She copied me on the memo. All right, so a written memorandum or email went out from Phyllis to every single, I assume it went to every department head, and some of them took the time to call me or get in touch with me. The highway superintendent wrote a memo, right? So if somebody didn't respond, i.e. like the accountant or whomever, that was up to them, right? But they've had more than several weeks to do that. So they can't say we didn't ask them to respond.
Okay.
But that's not the end of the line either. I'm just concerned about miscommunicating. Hopefully, what the selectmen are going to tentatively approve is a plan that I've recommended be adjusted to reflect the assistant town clerk, and we'll convey, my job at in these types of meetings is to facilitate the process, right? I've already given you my recommendation. So I'll make absolutely certain that I get a sense from the personnel board, for example, that the accounting assistant should be moved from level 1 to level 2. That shall be conveyed to the Board of Selectmen. They'll make the final decision, okay? And, and that's the way this process is designed to work, so that the board hopefully is comfortable approving a tentative plan, voting to approve it.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that, but I would just like to say that I think it would have been better if we had met with you and the department heads, because we're in the dark over here.
Well, again,
That was said at the last meeting.
that's beyond my control.
That's what we expected
I had nothing to
today.
do with that.
No,
But I think
I
that,
realize that.
as I said, it's always the responsibility, when it's all said and done, the town as the employer is required to communicate to the employee. If the employee doesn't want to communicate back, that's their decision, and I respect that. But I work for the town, I don't work for the employees. So that's why I'm making that distinction as clearly as I can.
Well, at the last meeting, that's what we had been told, right, Lana?
I believe that was what we were.
Yeah,
told.
we that's right. We told you at the last meeting that we were going to communicate back. I'm pretty sure I said the department heads.
We were
And
going to meet with them.
But I thought we were involved, and so I agree. I thought that was the
It
case.
was.
But,
Moving forward, we could, whatever needs to be done.
and you weren't here at the end of that meeting,
No,
so
I had to
you
go
were
to
at another meeting. So you are comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right. Then, all those in favor of the motion that was made by Joan to accept this plan tentatively, the concept of this plan, with looking at the assistant accounting position, signify by saying aye.
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 So everybody's in approval.
Right, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I think that, trust me, having been doing this for 20 years, I don't take this for granted. In fact, just the opposite. I've had so many experiences where this process falls apart. You really have to want to make this process work. It won't work on its own. And as I said, I'm anxious to get to the real issue, if you want to think about it from the employee's point of view. What they're most concerned about, make no mistake about it, as I think you would understand, is how they're paid, meaning how much money. And we just haven't had that conversation. And I know that there's frustration out there. There's got to be. At least I'd be frustrated if I were them. And we want to get that process completed ASAP, from a practical standpoint, working within the constraints. So, Phyllis, can you just make sure you get the board a copy of the acknowledgement form?
Sure.
I think you have it electronically, right?
I'm sorry, what did you say again?
It's the one-page job description acknowledgement form.
Oh, yes. I believe I do.
I'm pretty sure you have it.
Yeah.
I was just looking, I thought I had a copy. Oh, I think I do have a copy. So if you don't have it, I'm pretty sure I've got a hard copy.
I would love it if I could just scan it, that way I can,
Yeah, the board hopefully, should see that so that they know what it looks like.
yep, it's one page.
Michelle, will you please let me know if my attendance is necessary at that board meeting? One day
Absolutely.
to let them know that. Our next meeting, is there any other business that needs to come up? Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Is 9 o'clock still a good time? All right. And also, would you add to the agenda, not the sexual harassment policy, but Jonathan and I have discussed who would handle any concerns on sexual harassment or harassment within the town hall. So that's the topic of discussion, not the policy itself, which pretty much is boilerplate. It is boilerplate.
Yep.
So, all right.
I'm sorry, your next meeting is on November 20th, is that what I heard you say?
Pardon me?
10th,
Your next is when?
10th.
November 10th,
Oh, November 10th.
2020.
At 9 o'clock or?
9, is it, are 9 o'clock okay for you?
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
Yep, that's
Yeah, that's our
good.
regular time. It would be better to keep it.
So the other thing I would ask Phyllis is that, with that date in mind,
Yep.
I don't know what the selectmen's schedule is, but what I would, if possible, we'd like to be able to meet with the selectmen before that, so that when the Personnel Board meets next time, we can show them a tentative plan approved by the Board of
The
Selectmen?
selectmen are meeting on the 9th, the day before.
That's, it's up to you and John, But you need to just let me know whether I have to be there or not. Schedules being what they are, I'm pretty sure I'm available. I'm not really going anywhere, but be that as it may. Selectmen.
If there is no more business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:15.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried. Thank you, women, for your help, and thank you, Don.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir, for your assistance.